Welcome to a world where everything is bright and sunny. But underneath the surface lies a dark world, behind your safe little havens that you all call home. Beneath the surface there's an evil that festers and grows where the American dream goes dark. This is the Literary License Podcast, America Goes Dark episode. Your book to screen show where we head down a dark alley and discover the books, the films, and all the darkness in between. With your co-hosts Leandro Ghazi, Craig Johnson, David Grant, Vicky Ray, and Keith Shago. Things may look perfect on the outside, but what really goes on behind closed doors?
Close my eyes.
Have you checked the children?
Be afraid.
I hope they are watching. They'll see. They'll see and they'll know and they'll say, why, she wouldn't even harm a fly, a fly, a fly, a fly.
Hello, welcome to Literary License Podcast, and it's America Goes Dark. For Book to Screen, we'll be covering the book and watching the film. And today's podcast will be Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Café by Fannie Flagg and the film from 1991. And before we get started, let's find out who's with us. We got Barbara Van Canaraman in with us. Hello, Barbara.
Oh, so good to see you guys.
Nice to see you too.
And we got Leandro Ghazi. Hello, Leandro.
Hi, how are you?
Craig Johnson. Hello, Craig.
Hello, everybody.
David Cavallo. Hello, David.
Hi, everyone.
And Vicky Ray. Hello, Vicky.
Hi, everybody.
And I'm your host, Keith Shago. And before we get started, let's find out what we've been up to. Starting with you, Barbara. What have you been up to since last time we spoke to you?
What have we
It's
written?
been a long time. Well, I wrote a couple little books. One is a short story book called Duck for Cover and Other Stories. And I wrote a YA novel called Five Fortunes. And they're both doing pretty well.
Cool beans.
Excellent. Ooh, and are they available at Amazon? And
Yes, they are. They're available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, everywhere you shop.
Hey, I'll check it out.
excellent. And we'll put those in our show notes for all those people who are interested in getting a copy of those.
Thank you.
And what about yourself, Leandro? What are you been up to?
Reading this book, which is really big. But it was really interesting because I was so catched that I read it maybe in 2 weeks, and I couldn't stop reading. And also because it had like short chapters, it was more easy to get in on. What else? I've been working, and I start to go back to the allotment to start to work all the soil to get it ready for the summer.
Awesome.
And have a new bike. Have a driving lesson the other day, and towards getting my first car.
All right.
Excellent. Yay. And what about yourself, Craig? What have you been up to?
I've been reading The Secret of Nim, and
I've never read that.
He's getting a head start on next year's book list.
Oh, I've never read that. Do you guys who ever read that? Do you actually like that? I've never read it.
Okay,
You haven't.
Yeah, it's the book, the Mrs. Rats, Mrs. Rats and the Secret of and the Rats of Nymph.
Nim, yeah. Is that just a one? Is that a series? I'm stupid here.
No,
Okay.
it's a one-off children's book.
Well, I have not read that. I know it exists. I've just never read it.
I've been reading The Talented Mr. Ripley as well.
Awesome.
And I watched the movie last night.
Oh,
And,
did
But yeah, no, I've been updating my photography on my Etsy shop, Craig's World, just having a revamp. But yeah.
Excellent. And what about yourself, David? What have you been up to?
Unfortunately, focusing on work. There's been so much work. Which
You
is
say
crazy.
that every time I see you. Got out of work.
I know. I'm a workaholic. I work too much, and in my
They
place
say,
we
all
only
work
do.
and no play, David.
Yeah, that's true. You're right, to be honest. The good thing is that I got into a little bit of like a dystopian movies recently. I watched the whole series of the Hunger Games. I really needed that.
Yeah, I like watching all those too.
Sometimes I look, and this is going to be some very controversial, but sometimes I feel like, the story, we're not getting into much details, but sometimes it feels like, the story of the capital and the districts. And it's like, is that Europe and the capital is the UK?
I think it's the USA. I think.
Oh, I didn't see it that way.
I'm pretty sure it is. Coming to a neighborhood near you.
And then I got to watch there's another dystopian series called Divergent series. I don't know if you watched
I watched
that.
all those. That was a good one too.
It was interesting. I wasn't really a big fan of the acting, I would say, the main character, but it was okay. It was all right. It wasn't too bad.
It was a good rainy day series to bunker down with.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't mind that, to be honest. The other good thing is that finally we've got a little bit of good weather in the UK. We've had good sun today, yesterday so and so, but we've had the 2 days before constant sun, and I'm in such a good mood. I've been listening to Italian music again. I missed that. And then cycling to work, and with this weather, I'm like, yes, finally, good. Because this winter has been very, very long in the UK, like horribly wrong.
Could I bring you down?
Generally, being in the Mediterranean, being in Italian, that means I get affected by the weather when there's no sun at all. It's constantly
everybody
raining.
gets
horrible.
depressed. It's depressing. There's an actual clinical thing, not having sun.
Yeah, it's called SAD. I think they call it SAD,
seasonal affective disorder
or something. Right. It's interesting, but for me, I can handle a little bit of winter. But when it gets so long to get to the end of March, it's like, okay, where are the mid seasons? So it is what it is. But yeah, that's about it.
If you're like dystopian young adult films, try The Maze Runner. That's quite good as well.
Oh yes, I remember watching many years ago.
I gotta get a hold of the second one. I still haven't found it yet.
There's 4 movies of it out.
Is there 4? I
didn't know.
I haven't found any of them. I'm gonna have to go. I didn't know there was 4. I thought there was 2. I didn't know there was 4.
Well, the problem with them is that they don't call themselves Maze Runner 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Right.
You have to know what.
But it's continuity.
It's continuity. I think one's called Scorched Trials, and the other one's called something else. So you have to look for them for their titles. So
okay, I'll definitely have a look in that.
Yeah. And what about yourself, Vix? What have you been up to?
Just trying to help my daughter get through her last few for before she graduates from nursing school. I think she decided she's going to go and get a master's degree in nursing. We'll see what's going on with that. I'm just really tired today. Not a whole lot other than was packing boxes for tornado victims, sending that stuff, doing that thing that I try to do a couple times a week anyway to make myself useful to mankind. But other than watching Salem's Lot, and I watched some crazy movie called Your Highness with I cannot remember his name. Oh my God, everybody knows who he is. He played Green Goblin's son and Batman. I'm having a total
the one
Franco.
Franco, yeah.
Franco. He was in it. It was just an unrated. Well, Natalie Portman was in it. It was a totally uncut movie about knights, and it was really rude. You'd love it, Keith. I know you got to watch it if you get a chance. But it was just a fun watch for a change of pace. Did watch all of Salem's Lot, both versions, and we're going to talk about that in a couple of weeks, I guess. But I did find a good one that I thought was pretty good with Megan Fox. And I like Megan Fox, but I mean, I don't trip over myself to go watch her in movies. But it's called Midnight in the Switchgrass with Bruce Willis was in it. It was a really interesting thriller. I actually enjoyed it. Watched it twice, actually, because I missed some stuff in the beginning, but it was a really good flick. Let me see. What else are we doing? Just not a whole lot, really. Watched Malibu Shark Attack. If you want to lose an hour and 27 minutes of your life, Malibu Shark Attack is for you. The only reason I hung in there is because the girl that plays Nikita was in it. It was one of her first movies. I can't not say, I could just brain dead. I'm sleep deprived today. But other than that, not a whole lot. Just doing Easter this weekend with the fam. And what have you been up to? Obviously, you've been busy.
Well, I picked Ferris up on Saturday from the airport, so he's here for the next 25 days. Well, less than that now. Sorting out our wedding plans and sorting all those out, and just sorting out life and getting things sorted and throwing stuff away for the move next year and all that kind of stuff. So nothing really exciting. We started watching The Boys again, so we're redoing The Boys.
They didn't come out. The other new season didn't come out. Okay.
No, we're just starting with season 1 and we're
I'm just waiting so patiently for that to come out. Oh my God, what's taking so long?
So, that's it really. Just doing this and that.
Ferris liking The Boys.
Yeah, he likes The Boys, and we're rewatching the Planet of the Apes film series as well. So,
are we doing that?
We're doing that in season 8. So we got another season to go before we get there. So, but that's about it, really. Just kind of taking it easy and taking time off and sorting things out, really. Sorting life from a day-to-day basis.
It's the only thing.
Speaking about sorting through life. Brings us to Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Café, which is a 1987 novel by American author Fannie Flagg. Set in Alabama, it weaves together the past and the present through the blossoming friendship between Evelyn Couch, a middle-aged housewife, and Ninny Threadgoode, an elderly woman who lives in a nursing home. Every week, Evelyn visits Ninny, who recounts stories of her youth in Whistle Stop, Alabama, where her son-in-law Idgie and her friend Ruth ran a cafe. These stories, along with Ninny's friendships, enable Evelyn to begin a new, satisfying life while allowing the people and stories of Ninny's youth to live on. The book explores themes of family, aging, lesbianism, and the dehumanizing effects on racism on both Black and white people. It was adapted into a feature film, Fried Green Tomatoes, which was released in 1991. A television series adaptation was reportedly in development as of 2020, with executive producers Norman Lear and Reba McEntire, who was also to star, but the series was abandoned. What we're going to do is cut to the synopsis of Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe, and be right back. This is a synopsis for Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe by Fannie Flagg. Throughout the novel, the narrator and time period change, and chapter headings establish the date and source of the chapter. The narration alternates between the form of a fictional newsletter, The Weemed Weekly, the Threadgoode's house in Birmingham, and an omniscient narration. The framing story, set in 1986, presents Evelyn Couch, who goes weekly with her husband to visit her mother in a nursing home. During one visit, Evelyn befriends Ninny Threadgoode, another resident. She tells Evelyn stories of her youth in Whistle Stop in the 1920s and succeeding years. Between subsequent visits, Evelyn begins to adopt aspects of figures in these stories as role models. Ninny says she was an orphan raised by the Threadgoodes and that she eventually married one of their sons. She principally talks about the youngest daughter, Imogen Idgie Threadgoode, an unrepentant tomboy who becomes reclusive after her brother Buddy was killed on the railway. Ruth Jamison comes to live with the Threadgoodes while teaching at the Vatican Bible School, Idgie becomes enamored of her and is sad when Ruth leaves to marry Frank Bennett. Frank turns out to be a violent, abusive man who often beats Ruth, but she stays with him until her mother's death. Afterwards, Ruth sends Idgie a message appealing for help. Idgie, along with several men, rescue her and her son from Bennett. Intimidated by Big George, the Threadgoode's handyman, Bennett does not resist. With money from her father, Idgie reestablished the Whistle Stop Café with Sipsy, Big George's adopted mother, and her daughter-in-law Ansel as cooks. Idgie becomes secondary guardian to Ruth's son Buddy Jr. A gossip columnist refers to him as Ruth and Idgie's son, indicating recognition of the women's alternative family. Buddy becomes known as Stump after losing an arm in an accident. The cafe quickly becomes known to hobos all over the U.S. during the Great Depression as a welcoming place to receive a meal. The most recurrent guest is Smokey Lonesome Phillips, who's secretly in love with Ruth. When Ruth dies of cancer, Idgie is heartbroken. After the railroad yard closes, the cafe, and ultimately the town, ceases operation. Several years later, Idgie and Big George are arrested by the county for Frank Bennett's murder. The case is dismissed when the local minister, repaying Idgie for helping his son, falsely testifies she and Big George were at a 3-day revival when Bennett went missing. Bennett's body was never found. It is later revealed that Sipsy killed him when he attempted to kidnap his and Ruth's son. His remains were barbecued by Big George and fed to detectives investigating Frank's disappearance at the time. Stump recounts the stories of his guardians to his daughter and granddaughter. Big George's sons, Jasper and Artis, take independent paths. Jasper is a Pullman porter and Artis is a gambler and ladies' man. After the decline of Whistle Stop, Idgie and her brother Julian relocate to Florida when they operate a roadside food stand. Inspired by these stories, Evelyn starts working outside the house, selling Mary Kay products. At Mrs. Threadgoode's urging, she gets treated for negative symptoms of menopause. She also confronts various long-held fears. Evelyn becomes happier. While on vacation, she receives a letter from Mrs. Hartman, a neighbor of Mrs. Threadgoode, telling her of the later's death and of her having bequeathed various trinkets to Evelyn. And that is the synopsis for Fried Green Tomatoes by Fannie Flagg. Now back to the show. Welcome back to the Joyce Podcast. We're discussing Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe by Fannie Flagg. Starting with you, Barbara, what are your thoughts of the book?
The book. I had read the book, probably 30 years ago. So, since my memory is not what it used to be, I had to reread it. And it's so funny to reread a book at a different stage in your life, right? You just obviously
Totally different.
I'm 61, so now I get the whole the whole aging women and
yes, the menopause.
I have a different perspective than I had when I read it when I was probably 25. But I still enjoyed it, and also now that I write myself, people read books to read stories, to understand what to do in life and what not to do, to experience things they haven't experienced before. So in my mind, this book was kind of meta because it was a story about changing someone's life. And so it's sort of like navel gazing, recognizing that it was it was trying to change someone's life through story. But and also I think the storytellers in the South, that's a big thing, that storytelling, is a tradition, and I could see it captured in this book.
And Fannie Flagg did it too. I think she had such huge resources to pull from to write the book too. Because she grew up down in the South, so she had all that to funnel into the book, and she did a fantastic job. You felt like you knew all the characters. You really did. You got vested in them.
I'm a huge Fannie Flagg fan. I'll read every book that she's written. Welcome to the World, Baby Girl, and so on and so forth. And the thing I find with her books, and this is a big plus, but it's also a big downside for me, is that every time I read her books, when I finish, I am so depressed because I feel like I'm saying goodbye to these friends I've made.
That's what I'm saying. You get so vested in the characters. They're like them.
And she does this with everything. Welcome to the World, Baby Girl is about a girl who goes back home to a small Alabama town. And then she did another book I remember reading, and basically it was this town that starts in the 1920s, and you're following this town and the neighbors as they go through today, and as the town's drying up and everything that goes along with it. And the radio show, and it's almost like, I mean, it's like stepping into an episode of The Waltons that's kind of ongoing sort of thing. And that's what, I had to sit there and say, and Fried Green Tomatoes is, she did a book before this that doesn't have this kind of writing style. And then once she developed this writing style, she kind of kept on with it sort of thing.
I was kind of surprised to hear she walked off on finishing the screenplay for the movie. She kind of got tired of doing it. I think she did like 70 pages, I think I read it. And then Fannie Flagg said, no, see ya.
Well, she has written a sequel to Fried Green Tomatoes that came out this year called Fried Green Tomatoes and the Boy Wonder.
I've not heard of that.
Yeah, well, maybe in the screenplay she had to get rid of some of her characters, and she couldn't kill her darlings.
That's probably what it was. That's most definitely probably what it was.
I mean, when we get to the film, I mean, you realize that they kind of threaded through.
They did.
Especially the ending is a lot different sort of thing that we get in the movie sort of thing. What about yourself, Leandra? What are your thoughts of the book?
Well, I love it. I have seen first I watched the movie a long time ago, but every time that I was watching the movies, I never sit down and watch it. It's always I found it halfway through. I have the chance to get the book, and I love it. What I like, let's say halfway through the book, I thought, well, hold on, who is telling me this story? The author, someone, the main character, and I couldn't get it. Until then, I remember I went back to the beginning, and then the story is told by one of the sisters of what I would think is the main character. And for me, that was really interesting because when all the books that we have been reading, you see it from the view of the main character telling you the story, or the author, which is something that see everything and tell you. But this is different because it's a character. It's from the eyes of one of the characters, of one of the members of the family. So it was really interesting. Also, with all the divisions between chapters. Sometimes they were a bit annoying. Those there was like another person telling you like the
newsletter. Yeah, the newsletter.
Yeah, and I couldn't get why that was there. Right, because I imagine if they could remove all those one, the story could go anyway. But then I understood, okay, maybe it's like try to understand what's going on in the town, and
it's stuff she wouldn't have known herself. So they had to throw in the newsletter to get other points in there and other things in there.
And I think the newsletter, for me, I quite liked the newsletter because it was kind of like this whimsical. What's going on in the town, whimsical that, and it kind of gave you, and it also gave you that neighborhood friendly that everyone is, that we don't really have in today's society, where you have, a neighborhood and neighbors looking after neighbors and everyone invested. Because, I mean, Whistle Stop is basically not even I don't even think it's four corners. You know what I mean? It's a really small community, and I think to give you that feel, I think that's what the newsletter does, is that basically it's like the same people being told the same stories, the same families, and so on and so forth. So I think that's probably why that's in there, sort of thing.
Then I thought, well, maybe it's me not being from USA that can get the humor. Some jokes were funny, other were really stupid. But it was like, then I understood it was like kind of like to cut the emotions of the chapter, and then if it's going to talk about a different character, at least you have something divider to make your mind out from where you were. Well, love this. The story made me cry, so it's a good thing. It's a good book. And for the same price at the end, you have recipes. So what else? Well, you can ask for more.
You gonna try any of them?
Yes, but I need to meet get together with friends to do it. I wouldn't cook all that to eat by myself. There's no point.
Well, you got to make chicken and dumplings. You got to have chicken and dumplings.
Or fried catfish. You got to have catfish.
Oh, yeah, fried catfish. I love fried catfish.
Oh, they say that I
love chicken and dumplings as well.
It's good.
Just to warn you, if you make the chicken and dumplings, making the dumplings nice and fluffy is quite a feat in itself.
I think I've done it once with no problems. Other than that, they came out really hard, or they got too soupy, or they just
You got to use animal
thrown for a
fat.
wall. They were so hard. I could use it for
Yeah.
hollow points for the shotgun. You know.
Yeah,
you gotta
all the
eat-
recipes are really, really fattening. It's like a lot of frying, a lot of oil, a lot.
I'm telling you, that's all people do is deep fry shit here in Texas. I was at somebody's house. They deep fried their hamburgers. It's just like, y'all, I got to stay away from them because they will deep fry anything. I mean, I think they just decidedly do this just to see how far they can take their deep frying. Now everybody's got an air fryer, so it's kind of taking the fun out of it. But I think that's
what about yourself, Craig? What are your thoughts of the book?
I love the book. I like the chapters, like how each chapter was from either the nursing home or set back home sort of thing. And I love the little designs on each chapter as well, the little drawings. I thought that was really cute.
I didn't have little drawings. I had a Kindle version though.
I had an ebook.
And talking about the community, like where I live in East Finchley, it's only since the pandemic that we've set up a WhatsApp group for our street sort of thing. And it felt like when we were clapping for the NHS, like that's when the community came together. So it's something that was really prominent in this book. And I thought it was a really nice thing to explore, like an actual community feel. But yeah, it was a scary time. I mean, all the things that they went through during that time. I mean, you know, sometimes I just feel really
That's when the South was the South.
Yeah.
It was pretty hardcore back then.
And even the lesbian themes and stuff was really nice, and just I just really enjoyed the book and couldn't put it down, and I just read it in one go.
It was kind of nice how she represented the friendship, because I don't know if maybe Barbara may or may not agree with me, but it's not even so much about lesbianism, I don't think. It's just that women just have a way of I've said this before about other movies and books we've read, but women just need other women because they have relationships. I don't think most men could even understand when women are, you know, in cahoots as friends. And I mean, they really loved each other in the book though. I mean, it was really, I don't even think it was even sexual at most of the time.
Yeah.
It just sort of skims over the top of of sexualizing the relationship.
Idgie was my favorite character.
Oh God, yes.
She was awesome. She reminds me of the girl in The Crow on the skateboard. I just loved.
Yeah, she kind of does, doesn't she? I never would have drawn that together, but she does.
I think the reason why the lesbianism is not a big deal is because in this community, it's not a big deal in the community.
No,
so
they kind of figured it out, but nobody cared.
Well, but the thing is I think it's just because I think what they're showing, I think what Fannie Flagg is trying to show is that, okay, these two people obviously are in a relationship and everyone knows it, but because they're part of the neighborhood, and being part of the neighborhood is not about judging. It's all about, you know, they're very much an ample part of the neighborhood and very much involved.
Well, their cafe was the heart's blood of the little town.
I think also it's because when you read the book, it's like for the family was taking like something natural. It was never any moment that the parents judge her or say anything. It was like even they didn't even support her. It just accept her and carry on and accept her. For example, they were more paying attention that she didn't want to spend time with the family rather the way she was or what she was doing. And I think that changed everything in the story, because imagine if in the story the parents would have been against what she was feeling, so they will have a different perspective, and everything have to be hidden, you know, and all that, but never happened. So I think it shows you that, if, for example, if in your inner circle, let's say, everyone accepts you as you are, it's changed because you feel more support, and then you can be yourself and you don't care.
I also think for, I mean, the father pretty much spells it out when Ruth leaves her husband and she's pregnant. And the father gives Idgie money to open the cafe because he goes, now that she's living with you, you need to take responsibility. And so it kind of opens it up and says that basically everyone's okay with this situation, sort of thing. So and the co-parenting between Stumper and everything like
I
that.
think
You can
that she
see
just
how
paints a beautiful story and picture of two beautiful souls who just happen to love each other, whether they're lesbians or not. You know, it's just a wonderful story about two human beings and all the stuff they go through. Let's face it, the 20s and the 30s we're in a fun time, and just the way they protected their people. You know, the black people in their community and.
Well, another thing that's quite interesting as far as religion is concerned, lesbianism is not against any religion anyway.
Oh, I'm sure somebody will find something.
No, it's not. No, I mean, if you look at the Bible, and
well, the guys wrote the Bible, and who benefits more from lesbian love than two men?
Well, it's not but what I'm saying is not recognized even during Victorian times when it was against the law for homosexuality to happen in the UK. Lesbianism was not part of that. So lesbians
because they didn't give women too much of a thought after the fact back then.
No, it has nothing. No, it has nothing to do with that. It has to simply do that religion does not acknowledge lesbianism.
That's weird because I don't know, was kind of pounded into my head at our school.
Well, that's because you had nuns and you're Catholic and everyone knows.
Yeah, some of them were farting around in the darkness.
Well, it's really interesting what you're saying that because when I was in uni, I studied philosophy, and then there was like we have to read Plato, it's a play called The Banquet, and it's all about that, and it's telling you like in those times, well, to sum up,
right. Leviticus says nothing about women, but they do get around to it. In 1 Corinthians. But that's almost an insulting passage. I won't even read it. But
well, women are. When it comes to religion, women are more property than they are people anyway.
That's what I'm saying. Nobody really cared. What women, what they were doing or what they were thinking. I just find it unusual.
If you look at the whole book and all the books of the Bible, the only one that's basically dedicated to a woman is the book of Ruth. That's it. Right. Everything else is like.
Now, there were other books of the Bible, but the Christian church had stricken them from the Bible. There's other books. There's a whole book of Mary. There's a book of Mary Magdalene. These books were taken out of the Bible and nobody wanted you to read them, but they still exist. There's books floating around goes under the Apocrypha, where they have included these books of women, and a lot of people don't realize it. I didn't until somebody turned me onto it. And there's stuff that they just did not want powerful women. Sort of like the same reason Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. She wasn't, but that's how they portrayed her to be, But there are other books of women. They just have not been put in the King James version.
Well, to make Mary Magdalene a prostitute pretty much shows that, it gives
Jesus loved her and they couldn't have that.
Well, no, showing her as a prostitute, I think it seems more. It also shows Jesus as being very, very accepting, no matter what you were. And that no matter what sins you may occur, that he's accepting and going to love you. So it kind of portrays that as well, as far as the storyline.
Yeah, that Old Testament's pretty dicey.
Well, there's two gods. Well, there's two gods, isn't there? There's the vengeful God of Old Testament, and the New Testament, for some reason, he has a change of heart and becomes the all-forgiving. The
message probably it was new time too. The Gospels weren't even written they were written after Jesus, and there's apocalyptic versions, and they go on to different versions for whatever that period of time was.
Well, the only thing you can say about the Bible, all you can sit there and say that if any of it's true, let's sit there and say that it is true. By the time it got written down, Jesus probably swam across the water. By the time it got written down, he's now walking on top of it. Because you know what people are like when the story's going from person to person.
Yes,
so who knows? What
And
about
she
yourself,
told you
Davy?
friends. Yeah.
What about yourself, Davy? What are your thoughts about the book?
So I thought that the book was a little gemstone, like a sort of in the world of literature. It was like filled with wisdom of like these experienced old women telling the stories. I felt like I kind of had to be my nanny, some sort of, because I never had like a grandmother like that. I generally loved it. Unfortunately, I've watched the movie before reading the book. I watched the movie when I was younger. I watched it with my mum. This is probably the 6th time in my life I've watched this movie. I really, really love it. So that kind of ruined the experience a little bit of the
book kind of screwed me up reading. I should have not watched the movie again before reading the book because my brain was in a different, orbit.
I'm exactly the same. Unfortunately, there were so many
characters and stuff in the book.
Yeah, there were also so many characters. Then they don't really have important roles, or they were kind of side the story in the movie. So I got a bit confused. And at some point, this new character would appear, this person would appear, and I'm like, okay, I'm not interested. But then they talked about them more and more in the book, and I'm like, okay, I should have focused. I should have paid more attention to it. So it was a little bit confusing because there were so many characters. But I generally loved the movie. I obviously love the movie, but I love the book. And I love the storytelling of Ninny.
Did a fantastic job doing that.
She was incredible in the way she was telling all these stories, and she was very opinionated, but I didn't care. I loved the way she told the story. As she was there telling you something, telling you a story, telling you how she felt about the character, how things were. And even there were situations that felt very unrealistic. Like, well, I don't know if you remember the scene when she was telling about this person who is so skinny, and then when they opened her up, the whole thing, the liver came off and bounced up and down.
Oh, the tall tales. They should just create a book of tall tales.
So that's clearly like realistic, but then you just like, okay, it doesn't matter. I just want to listen to her like talking, and really, really, really loved it. My absolutely favorite part was the empowerment to Evelyn becoming Tawanda. This like sort of second
poor
character.
Evelyn, man, her husband.
I know, but then being the way she was, and then the way she grew up, and then the way she was her whole life, I felt like, yes, it was very extreme when she had this all 4 pages of love venting and ranting about everyone she hated and everything that was wrong in the world, imagining in her head that she was this sort of superheroes fighting and killing and torturing all these people who deserved it. But I had so much fun. I have to admit, in my whole life, those are probably the funniest 4 pages I've ever read in my whole life.
She adopted all the characters.
And it was amazing.
She kind of assimilated characters that she was
she created alter ego, right? So she created a like sort of superhero that she could never be. But
I got a kick out of her. I felt bad for her. What was this? What year was that supposed to be? I get confused. Is it the
1986
in the book? In the book,
in 86.
It is 86 in the book, because I mean, sometimes I got lost when it came to that. I just kind of thought, I mean, just the where she got her to get you some of them their hormones. It's just like, I do. That was just funny part of the book. It definitely resonates with some of us. For real.
I definitely resonated with her, like as sort of like as if she's the character who listens to the story, so it's kind of on our side. We are the reader, so we listen to the story, but at the same time she's in the story, but she's also listening to the story. It was a very intricate way of narrating the story, and I loved her. But she was kind of on our side, so I kind of resonated with her. But at the same time, she was changed and transformed because of the story and because of the relationship she had with Ninny Threadgoode. And
it's nice to see the evolution.
And I loved the way she evolved and she transformed, and she became a better version of ourselves, and then eventually she also got over her prejudices and racism sort of that she had, and she was dealing with, thanks to, again,
Ninny,
the old woman who was there for her, and then giving her advices. And she also had an amazing religion. Besides the fact that I'm not a religious person, but I appreciate when somebody has a genuine religious experience. Like in this case, she went there and she felt like a completely changed person. So I'm like, wow, incredible. So she had a completely change of heart and everything. She just transformed. She's like, from a little caterpillar to a cocoon into a butterfly. She just evolved. She was amazing. And then the story is filled with like inspiring, powerful women. Not only Idgie, because obviously she was one of the main characters, but also Sipsy. I love Sipsy. She
Yeah.
did not care about even racism, even the Ku Klux Klan. She called them, "I'm not scared of those white ghosties" or something. And I was
I
laughing
just wish
when
I
she
could get
said it.
Cicely Tyson out of my head every time I think Sipsy. That is Sipsy as far as I'm concerned, is Cicely Tyson.
She was great. And yes. And I loved it. And I loved it. And another last thing, I promise, because I talk a lot. So the one thing I loved and I found fascinating is the concept of food in the story. Now, another the book is called Fried Green Tomatoes, and obviously they're focusing, on the traditional food and the fact that she loved this recipe. But I've noticed one thing. I don't know if probably other people might have noticed. So I started writing down all the names of these candy bars that she went time by time to.
How many did you get?
A lot. I've got the whole list written down because I was curious. But what I've noticed is that suddenly, so there was this conversation obviously going between her and Ninny, and then Ninny was telling about all the traditional food, all the amazing food, all the menus, and even the April's Fool funny menu, etc. So she was talking about this traditional cooked food. At the same time, if you can draw two parallel lines, you have the food that was traditional in the story, and then the food that Evelyn was taking to her. It was all candy bars, all wrapped artificial, chemical filled and preservative filled food. And suddenly, as she was changing and evolving in the story, the food became a little bit more normal. Like she brought, for example, the pimiento cheese sandwich, and suddenly she started cooking. So as she transformed, the way she brought food, the food that she was bringing and taking to her was changing as well. So I don't know, I noticed this thing about the food. So it's kind of in my head, and then you got the final explosion when you reached the point when she fried green tomatoes, and there was I don't know. I noticed the metaphor of evolutionary transformation with the food, and then she was taken to.
Food brings people
I find it
together
fascinating.
too.
And cooking for people is love, right? I mean, sharing
it brings
food
people together.
I mean, it is an act of love because it takes a lot of work.
Oh yes, definitely.
Thanksgiving, 20 hours to make, 15 minutes to eat. I feel so unloved on Thanksgiving.
But I also think that if you look at what each of us cook, whether it's for Thanksgiving, Easter, Christmas, or even at everyday family meals, these are normally we're taking recipes that are brought down from us from our family. And we're bringing those through, and then our children pick up those recipes and they're making it for their family. And so they're traditional recipes that we use. I mean, I'll take my mom's fruit salad. I mean, the thing is my great grandmother made this fruit salad. My grandmother made it. My mother makes it. I make it. My nieces and nephews now make it for their Christmas dinner every single year.
Share it now. We all want it.
Yeah, I know. It's like, what gives? I need the recipe. I'm getting hungry for chicken fried steak just by doing this podcast. Because there's a new restaurant down the street. Chicken fried steak. I was like, man, there's like 3,000 calories. It's got my name on it right now.
I mean, even my bolognese sauce, I made on Sunday, it's passed down from my mom, or meatloaf or scalloped potatoes or all the other stuff that I make on a regular basis. They're all recipes brought down. Of course, I've added recipes of my own, and they kind of get passed on to
after my mom died, we all had her little handwritten recipes, and you wanted to keep her handwriting, but you also wanted to keep the recipes, and it was. It just, you see it and you remember all the times she made it, and it makes you want to make it for your family. And food, food is love, and food can be, and right. I think her, the food that Evelyn was eating was, trash, right? And so it was like you said, and a metaphor for her whole life. It was just empty. It was empty calories. It was empty of
Krispy Kreme donuts too. I think they mentioned Krispy Kreme.
We have them in the UK too.
Krispy Kreme is just evil. Why they're at the checkout line at my store now, I don't know why, but that's just not cool.
That's just bad. But one thing, I mean, besides the food, everything at the Whistle Stop Cafe, all the people were just warm and fuzzy, and everyone took care of each other. And then, of course, she Fannie Flagg juxtaposed it to how Evelyn was having these terrible run-ins with, total jerks in the parking lot and here and there. And I just thought that was a little over the top. I mean, yes, you do meet jerky people in modern life, but they're not all jerks, you know. It's like,
Yeah. She definitely had an attitude, but she was so unhappy at home too. She wasn't appreciated. She was not really loved like she should be loved. And it was really just such a blessing. I mean, how you watch just that one relationship and how it rippled out into so many different, areas in other people's lives, even into the future, which would be Evelyn.
I mean, I don't think Evelyn was unloved. I think it basically is basically what happens is as you get, well, it's not even being appreciative. What happens is I think what they're trying to show is that if once you're in a relationship for a long period of time, it's not that they're unloved or unappreciated. You kind of just take things for granted. You kind of get stuck in this groove sort of thing. And it's really kind of hard to break that. So basically, she cooks dinner, he comes home and watches football or whatever. It's not that he doesn't appreciate her. Well, it's simple fact that basically this is what their lives have become. It's not through a thought process.
Also, is that she never have said the time enough to take herself to find herself, to find what she wanted to do, and then, for example, she felt like she has been carrying on life, but never found her place, something that she likes, something that she do it with passion. And then when she starts to find that and change, it's like, oh wait, what's the problem with you? What's going on? It's like, and then she was telling the husband that, look, for all this time I have been trying to do things to kind of fill a gap and me feel like better, and it doesn't work because the husband was, I don't know, just sitting there watching telly and eating without acknowledging that she maybe wanted to do something different.
But for me, I thought it was more also with, what you do get with women is the empty nest syndrome.
Right.
And her children moved on. And she's like,
that is rough.
What,
let me tell you.
What do I do? Well, what do I do now? Because the thing is, if you don't move forward with your life and the thing is, you got to rediscover what your role is because your children no longer need you.
Well, they always need you. Trust me. They always.
Yeah, but it's not a day-to-day basis. They're not living in the house anymore.
No.
So and basically the husband that you had, because he the husband tends sometimes take a second seat to this, develops his own routine. So then what happens basically is once the children are gone, then you got the misplaced mother or the misplaced wife basically has no routine because her routine basically was the children and then the husband, but now the husband's found his own way, doing his own thing, and it's kind of like she becomes a bit stagnant.
Right. And she said, I'm too young to be old and I'm too old to be young. Remember?
Is there never a more truer statement ever made? Let me tell you.
Right? She was like lost that way.
Yeah. That's relevant. Because sometimes you don't, your kids do, they move out. And it's like, boy, you did all these things and you had all this extra stuff. There was sports, there was laundry, there was dinners, there was PTA, there's this, there's that. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you just niente, nothing.
I think it's about that she was like kind of like scared because in several times you could read that, for example, she went to do a course to see her body and she was scared of using a mirror to see her own part.
I don't think I would have done that either, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, but what I'm saying
therapy, but nothing like that. Just like
but it's really interesting because when she told Ninny said, I can help you with that, but have you never like kind of seen yourself, your own body? And it's like, as that's one of the examples. The other, that was she was so interested in the story that Ninny was telling her because she could see the story of someone that wanted to do something, was going and doing it, and don't give a shit about anyone else, what they will think, what they will say, and that's. She wanted to do something, but she was all the voices in their head saying, no, I shouldn't be doing this, or until I like it because when she used the one that is like okay, what that person will be doing to change the situation, but now I can do it myself, thinking that I'm a superhero. So that was
when she got going, though, there was no stopping her. She was just like, chugging, motoring through Mary Kay and everything else.
But I think you also have to look at Evelyn's approach in life anyway. If she's hitting menopause in 1986, chances are that means she was born in between the 30s and the 40s. which is a totally different time where women didn't express themselves. You know, the whole thing about, you know, you're either a virgin or a whore, basically. And if you were a whore, you know, if you slept with one guy back in those days, sort of thing. And I mean, you know, and so the women's roles and everything like that are a totally different thing. And the way her thought process is. Now, the thing also is that, you know, I think we're a bit better nowadays than we were, you know, if you look about 30 years ago, because now I think that we as a society in general tend to proceed in our lives, sort of thing. We don't seem to be sticking to our decade where we grew up. But there for a while, I mean, I know my mom was stuck in her decade, and I know my aunts were stuck in their decade where they grew up, and their thought processes and stuff. I think now that I don't think we're so much stuck in our decade now. I mean, I know I'm not stuck in like the 70s, 80s where I grew up. I'm not kind of stuck in that anymore. I appreciate the music, but I know that I'm always growing and changing and evolving. And I know everyone around me is doing that as well. So,
I remember.
but I also,
oh, go ahead. No, I'm sorry.
Carry forward.
I was going to say, I remember when my aunts and my grandmother were my age, they looked like little old ladies.
I know. Have you noticed the difference?
They, you know, they let themselves just, they ate whatever, they acted like little old ladies. And
it was the hair, the makeup, the clothes that they still try to force on us if you go into Target or Walmart. And glasses. I mean, they had these helmets for hair. They didn't have anything pretty for them to wear now. I mean, just like now we got choices.
Right, but is there acceptance of that's what it's like to be, you know, this age, you know, in this society?
Not without a fight. I will die on this hill. I don't care. I am not wearing ugly clothes.
I mean, if you look at 1986, let's take the Golden Girls. Now, the Golden Girls. Yeah. The Golden Girls of that time period are basically in their 50s.
I know.
Yeah,
they're in their 50s.
Yeah. And if you rewatch it, I mean, basically is B. Arthur's character Dorothy moving in because she's just hit 50.
No.
I know, that's what I'm saying. People, we have really, I don't know what has changed, but we don't dress or act old anymore. I think we're more on the go as a species than we used to be as women. Either that, I don't even know if that's a good anthropological study, boy.
I think it's like before when, for example, I don't know, like when the internet is not going on and everything was different, it was you were reaching certain age that there was no more like room to do things that young people were doing anymore because your body was not able to do it as, I don't know.
Well, that hasn't changed. My body still is not able to do half that shit. But at least I have the option to try.
But why do you have that option? Because now the world has evolved.
A little bit.
I mean, a bit like what Leandro's saying, a simple fact is that I think the reason why things have probably changed now is because, and I hate to say it, things like Ricky Lake, Phil Donahue, Oprah Winfrey, all this other stuff where they were bringing like normal everyday people and realizing that you could and be whoever you want to, no matter what your age is.
Got to put Springer in there somewhere, and Sally Jesse Raphael.
But having this coming into your home like in the 90s and sort of stuff, you know, basically it's like, okay, we have to be forced to be forever evolving, and we also have to be changing. And then with the globalization and the internet, as Leandro was saying, so now we're kind of faced that we always have to keep moving and going forward, because if you're not, we now feel that if we don't keep evolving, that we're going to be left behind. And the worst thing in society today is being left behind. Now, with Fried Green Tomatoes, what's quite interesting is that we're dealing with a community situation. And the thing is, and if you look at today, even though the community seems excellent, I think the reason why we're all able to move forward is because we don't have the community and we don't have the judgment coming from our fellow neighbors as much as we used to, sort of thing. It wasn't all, we can pretty much be our own people. And if you make a mistake, then it's up to you to sort that mistake out. You might have close friends who might be judgmental, but as far as society and community, your community is no longer judging you because everyone's tied up in their own lives. But with that, you do get a give and take situation. Because of that, you no longer have a community, but you're able to be who you want to be. Or you can have a community, but maybe not be who you want to be. So it's a kind of a give and take situation.
Makes sense.
So, I mean, what I liked about fried green tomatoes, it does remind me of my grandmother a lot, and Ninny Threadgoode's a lot like my grandmother in so many ways. I mean, all my life lessons and everything that I have in life is from her situation. I was reading Ferris when my grandmother died and we had a family reunion. I think I read to David when he was here over Christmas. I read what I had to write for my family reunion about my grandmother. And, it was like a rainy day. And basically, as she would bring out this big box of photographs and negatives and everything like that. And we would go through them like this exciting children. We'd stop what we're doing, go through them. My mom and my grandmothers talk about what, people she grew up with, cousins, aunts, uncles, people we didn't know. We get the story of how her brother died in the hayloft by, falling from the hay mountain, landing on a pitchfork, and and how one, but it's like, it's all like family stories, but but she'd go into full detail about this, and time that there was a car accident when she was like 15-year-old, the cars were new, and and everyone was looking for the head of this headless body that was in this car, and it was at her feet. But there was all these kind of stories that would come out every time, these photographs. And I just remember that she had like this negative viewfinder, which is like a Viewmaster sort of thing. So you put the negative in, you hold it up to light, and you can see like pictures that were never developed. And I just remember that there's one of this woman in a coffin. She's all laid out and stuff like that. I don't know why, but
that's what they used to do back then, because my mother's Italian, and every time somebody died, like her mother died when she was 2 years old, that'd be 1934. And they took pictures of that so that they could remember. People do that. We're all morbid in my family. When somebody passes away, like for instance, when Justin passed away, my mother wanted pictures of him because she couldn't be here. So I sent her pictures.
Well, the funny thing about this one is, like, I looked at it and I go to my grandmother, I go, "Who's this?" And my grandmother takes the Viewmaster, puts it to her eye, and she has to step over to the window, like, to get a view of her thing. She goes, "I don't know who the hell that is." So
you guys had him on a Viewmaster?
Yeah. Now they were kind of just like this like a negative.
Oh, the thing. Oh, okay, the thing. I forgot about those. Gosh, yeah, those are. I wish I had one.
And then she gives it to my mother. She goes, "Bonnie, do you know who this is?" My mother looks at it. It's like, "No, I don't know who that is." And my grandma takes one last look. She goes, "I don't know who she is either, but I hear someone in this family loved her at one time." She just went on her story. So Ninny kind of always remind me of like my grandmother, because my grandmother used to tell these stories and these life lessons.
I miss that. It seems like that's becoming a lost thing. A lot of people don't tell this. Like my grandfather from Italy told me all these stories when he was a young boy in Italy, and I always tell Asher about it, because it just that's something between my child and some between my mother. Something happened in that generation where they just don't care about that stuff anymore.
Well, before television and television and internet, people entertained each other with stories.
Yeah, I mean, they read books. They read lots of books,
right?
But the thing is, you also have to remember with stories is that when you're telling these to your children, they may not be listening in the stuff that you're doing or whatever like that. But what you'll find is when they get older and they start reflecting back, because you don't reflect when you're young. No. Young is like, "Oh, I'm not, I'm gonna live forever, da 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 da." But as you get into your 30s and 40s, what you find yourself doing is repeating these stories to other people, and that's what I do now. I mean,
right.
Well, I mean, I think everyone in this room has heard some story or another from myself or my grandmother. So.
Right. Well, I mean, I think I might be older than all of you guys. And so I try to, I've been to a few funerals, and there was this one picture of this woman, they had a montage of pictures, and I didn't really know this woman. She was the wife of someone, and there's this picture of her just laughing, like looking so joyful. And she has a pineapple on her head. I don't know the story, but I kept thinking, do I have a pineapple picture?
I don't. I know one thing. I think we need to go out and get a Carmen Miranda picture taken soon.
No, she obviously was having like the best time. I mean, she just looked like she was so joyful, and she had a pineapple on her head. And I was like, I don't know. Do I have any pictures? Like, are they ever going to find a picture of me looking that happy, doing that, something that funny and laughing? So I started thinking about, when my mom died or my grandmother died, like you'd say, "Oh, they used to say that. They used to say that." And I go, do I ever say anything wise? I think the thing I say the most is that would be better toasted.
You know, what's going to be sad is people will remember what we said, Barbara, after we're dead. They'll never tell us while we're here.
I need some wise sayings, and I got to say them a few times so people remember that I always said. But
It
that
was-
would be better
it was
toasted
really-
with my
But a
legs.
lot of things are better toasted. That's the truth. All of my subs, everything toasted.
That's
It was really moving when at the end of the book said like all her life could enter in a shoebox.
Yeah.
right.
And it's like it's true. It's like then I started to think it's like, yeah, it's true. You die and then all your clothes can go away, and the only thing that will be in for the people that know you is what you have said, the memories.
Yeah.
And if you have like strong memories that I know that people then can carry on passing, it's like a kind of like, in a way, you don't die because you carry on in the family by
People
something.
remember you. They
Yeah.
keep you in their hearts and their thoughts.
But all the things that maybe you were have like a pressure, like a treasure for another person, maybe don't have any meaning at all.
Well, I think what I thought was quite interesting is I don't think that Evelyn's going to do much with the gallstones.
Right.
But what I think I did find, because now she's a Mary Kay Cosmetics, and it's quite interesting because when Ninny dies in the book, by this time Evelyn's now going house to house, and she's gaining this whole new community around her that people like. And so with the pictures of Ruth and Idgie and Whistle Stop and the Threadgoods, and especially like with the recipes, it's because Ninny has nobody, because her son Albert, who is mentally disabled, and he
Right.
died like when he was in his 30s, and but passing everything to Evelyn, it's almost like she passed these things, and even though they may seem like not a lot, but I could see Evelyn passing these stories on to her customers and these recipes on, and she probably passed it on if her son gets married to his wife or whatever, or however that plays out. But for me, it kind of gave me that vision that even though this box didn't seem like anything much, but Evelyn's going to keep Ninny alive through the stories that Evelyn's now going to tell. And
I
then she's
like
going to
how
have the
she handled
pictures.
death in the book too. You know, it wasn't such a finality. It was a time to, remember, like you were just explaining.
Well, I don't think death, for me, I don't think death is the final place anyway, the way I look at death. Death is, the thing is, as long as people remember you and keep you in their heart, you're alive. And by keeping these things alive, I mean, every time I see a robin, that reminds me of my grandmother. She used to draw robins situation. And every time I'm slightly depressed or something like that, I'll see a robin, and all of a sudden I feel like, well, get over yourself. You're being stupid. And little things like that always, reminds me of things. Every time I hear an Elvis Presley song, my mom comes alive to me again, because she was a big Elvis Presley fan. And, and it's, and I'm sure that when I pass on, there are probably things that I've done for people that one day they'll think, oh, and that will bring me alive in their heart one more. So I don't think death, I think the only time death is finality is basically if you're not being remembered. And I think that if you're not being remembered, maybe it's probably better that you try to do the best you can and be as good to other people as possible, because that will keep your spirit alive long after you're gone.
Yes.
Mom was in the hospital the last week of her life. I mean, she had so many visitors, and the nurse was like, I thought your mom must have been a movie star or something. So many people came to see her. And I
Wow,
said,
doesn't that make you feel good that she touched so many
she was
people?
just a really nice person, and people came over. I mean, she, I found all these things that she'd done for people that she never talked about. Like it was, it added to my her legacy for me. But I also, like when I've written some essays, and one time, a stranger, usually I ask my friends for reviews, but a stranger wrote a review of one of my essays and said, this book really cheered me up when I was down. And I thought, oh, if you reach out and get, and make a stranger's day better, like who could ask for anything more than that?
And the thing is that with that book, he's probably passing it on to other people.
Let's hope so, and then he only gave me 3 stars. I go, why only 3 stars? It made your day better.
I think that this is the key thing that Evelyn was struggling, that she was feeling that she was doing all the things like you can do in a normal day, but she was not doing anything substantial that changed the life of anyone, like in the story that she was listening and she wanted to kind of be.
She wanted to connect.
Yeah, and with Ninny connecting with her and touching her, and in return, Evelyn was touching her and connecting with her, which basically by the end of the book, Evelyn's connecting with a lot more than that, and that she's finding herself and she's blossoming into what she's becoming. And I think that's a very important life lesson to be had situation, you know.
Yeah, I think that's what the book resonates.
What do you think, Craig?
What about the resonate? Yeah, I mean, listening to all you guys with your stories and that, it's just I was reminiscing about my childhood and my relationship with my grandma, and you know, yeah, it made me feel very melancholic. And yeah, it's interesting that, you know, books are like, you know, they're sacred objects, and it's such a powerful thing to have one that could be moved on or passed on, sorry, for that feeling to be replicated, or, you know, it's really nice. Yeah, I miss my nan, and you know, I think I feel privileged that I had a nice nan and in my life, and yeah.
I mean, and I think that's what the book helped resonates as well, is just to remember all the other stuff that can do with it. So I think. With that, I think we should rate fried green tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe. And starting with you, Leandra, how many stars do you give this?
10.
You liked it that much, huh?
Yes, no, I really enjoyed.
Good deal.
Yes, no, this really good book. Easy to read, interesting. Make you think about different things, because it's not just touching one subject. It's like, because it's through time, goes from, I don't know, from
1920.
Yes, and then going through the Second World War, and then what was going on after, and then until 1986 or 84, something like that. So you could see all the transition in the society, what was going on, even in the small town that they used to have a railway, and then everything changed. No, also really like the story, the love story is really like really sweet,
genuine,
and pure, you know, that, which is like, and even the connection that she was having, like the friendship, or one thing that we haven't mentioned is like when she explained her son when he couldn't do things with one hand, and that was really like, for me, it was moving, because instead of like telling him off or trying to, she said, okay, come with me, and then she showed her with something not connected with him whatsoever, which was a dog with 3 legs that was happy as any dog, even happier. And then she could make understand, well, see, that thing doesn't determine who you are, is how you do it. And that was, well, and even when he was not wanted to be having in a relationship because he was scared of not doing certain things, and then she showed him that he could do it anyway. So it was really moving book. So yeah, top.
What about yourself, Craig? How many stars do you rate this?
I'll give it 5 out of 5 fried green tomatoes. And what Leandro said about the transition, it was a really easy to follow transition, whereas compared to something like The Talented Mr. Ripley, when they're going backwards and forwards, I was a bit lost. But with this particular book, I found it it flowed really well, and it was just an excellent story.
And what about yourself, David? How many stars do you give this?
Myself as well would give it 5 stars out of 5. At first, I thought this jumping from from time to time to another time was going to get a little bit confusing, but instead it felt like this is probably the only book I've ever read in my life which the chronological order did not really matter. It was more like connecting to the emotion and kept you interested into the story. It was kind of like revealing the stories and the characters and the life lesson and the wisdoms, going one step at a time. But then it felt like the story was opening up to us, the readers, and also to Evelyn, as she was ready for the stories and the wisdom, if that makes sense. So yes, there was no chronological order, which is normal, let's just say, in a book, but I think it was very well written. And eventually you connect to the character, and then she talked to another thing, and you connect to that, and everything makes sense. It was delightful, I would say. It's definitely 5 stars out of 5. Plus the characters.
What about yourself, Vix?
Oh, I thought it was a great story. It explained a lot of nuances of the South and what it was like in the 20s and 30s. They expressed racism and the poverty, and we didn't even talk about how they ate the guy. They ate the guy. They fed the guy to the detectives. We kind of left that out, but I guess we can get to that with the movie.
The cannibalism.
I know, a little endo cannibalism. I mean, it was just a really, she mastered the storytelling in this book, and it's just a really good book about 2 women and their beautiful relationship and all the lives that they touched. And it's just definitely the feels, so it's got to have a 5. Definitely a 5.
What about yourself, Barbara?
Well, gosh, I have to give it a 5. No, I'm just kidding. No, it is a 5. I mean, I think there's not enough stories that really capture what it's like to be a woman in society at different points in history, and what's expected of us, and what we're not allowed to do. I mean, after Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, they reiterated that women were not allowed to get their own credit cards till the 70s, and that had to be by
I remember my mother having said Mrs. John Ray, the regular MasterCard. Yeah, you're 100% correct on that.
Women couldn't even get a credit card on their own until the 70s. So
yeah, I remember.
They say you've come a long way, baby. Well, we're going back a long way, baby.
We might be right now.
Right now.
Get the claws back out.
Yep. So, it's like, I can't believe I have to keep protesting this crap, these women who are like 70 years old. But I mean, I think it's really important for women's stories to be part of, part of our reading
because it has been a haul for women. It has.
Exactly.
So, yes.
It's, women's autonomy and women's, I mean, her role.
Just being women.
Her role. I mean, remember, I don't know if you remember the movie Pleasantville, and William H. Macy comes home, "Where's my dinner?"
Yes.
That encapsulates a lot.
Where's my cake for Father's Day?
Yeah. Oh, where's my cake, Bedelia? Yeah. Don't get me going.
Yes, so I give it a 5.
I mean, interesting thing about the Whistle Stop Cafe, it is loosely based on Irondale Cafe, which is in Irondale, Alabama. So if you find yourself anywhere near there, the cafe, which is known for its fried green tomatoes, is still in operating. It's ran by Flagg's aunt, Bess Fortenberry, and it's been run by her since 1932. And for the last 4 decades, it's been her and her 2 friends running it, and it's still working and running today.
I love places like that. I seek them out, literally.
We should go there.
Trip. Let's all
go
there.
Y'all get on a plane.
Meeting point.
And another interesting thing is that Harper Lee, once we did To Kill a Mockingbird last month, she praised the book, and she's saying airplanes and television have removed the Threadgoodes from the Southern scene. Happily for us, Fannie Flagg has preserved a whole community of them in a richly comic, poignant narrative that records the exuberance of their lives, the sadness of their departure. Idgie Threadgoode is a true original. Huckleberry Finns would have tried to marry her.
Yep.
So
She would have rejected him because she is not into that scene.
no, not at all. So, but for Fried Green Tomatoes, I give it a solid 5. I think any author, and I am a bit biased because I am a huge Fannie Flagg. As soon as her books come out, her and John Irving are the two novelists I pick up as soon as they come out, and this captures everything. And to her credit, to be able to switch from first person to third person and back to first person and still stream that story narrative through and not get lost in any of the details, tells you someone who's extremely talented, because that's a very, very hard thing to do. So I'll give her that.
She's accomplished in her own right. She was always on. Well, was she on? What was that, Match Game? I think she was on Match Game. Fannie Flagg was too. I think she's on Carol Burnett a couple of times too, huh?
And Laughing.
And Laughing, yeah. Wait, what was the other? Hollywood Squares. Saw her on that. These guys were saying, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Was she ever on Hee Haw? You remember Hee Haw?
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God, you're showing her age.
So yeah, I mean, she's been around for. I mean, in America, if you grew up in America, that Fannie Flagg was a fixture on a lot of game shows and stuff. She would appear. You never quite knew what she was famous for. She did pop into movies. I mean, she's in the next movie, the movie that we'll discuss this. She does make an appearance in that. But I've only known her for what you're saying, Match Game, Hollywood Squares.
Is she there?
Laughing.
She's alive, I think.
Very much alive. Yeah, she's got a new book out. So
still kicking it.
So this brings us.
Are you looking for a graphic design that will take you to the next level, or something that shows confidence within a growing market to help you stand out amongst the crowd? Amazing Designs gives consistent and on-brand designs whether you are looking for something conservative or you want to let your imagination soar. They bring professionalism to a high standard, and they're able to visualize your ideas and give them that extra edge. Working one-on-one with their designers will give you a design that will live up to your expectations and more. Affordable, expert designs for all occasions, whether it's logos, brochures, or whatever you can dream of. Amazing Designs is your to-go place for creativity and hands-on expertise. Try Amazing Designs today. Contact them via email at amazingdesigns505@gmail.com. That's amazingdesigns505@gmail.com, or reach out by phone at country code 1-805-203-0427. We love them so much here at the Literary License Podcast that we use them ourselves.
But I'd rather be different than be the same.
So this brings us to Fried Green Tomatoes, the movie, which is the 1991 American comedy drama film directed by John Avnet and based on the Fannie Flagg 1987 novel. It was written by Flagg and Carol Sabinski and starring Kathy Bates, Jessica Tandy, Mary Stuart Masterson, Mary Louise Parker, and Cicely Tyson. The film tells the story of a housewife who is unhappy with her life, befriends an elderly lady in a nursing home, and is enthralled by the tales she tells the people she used to know. The film was released in the theaters in the United States on December 27th, 1991, garnered positive reviews from critics, and was a box office hit, grossing $119.4 million on an $11 million budget. It was nominated for 2 Oscars at the 64th Academy Awards, Best Supporting Actress for Jessica Tandy, and Best Adapted Screenplay. What we're going to do is cut to the trailer of Fried Green Tomatoes. I'll be right back.
Evelyn tried food.
I'm sorry, honey. The game's almost over. I just want to see a little bit of it.
She tried romance.
If I'd answered the door wearing only cellophane, would you still be watching the baseball game?
No, honey. I'll probably be checking you into a loony bin.
Then, she met a new friend.
Mrs. Cleo Threadgoode, 82-year-old widow. Imagine that.
A good friend.
I hate candy bars all over the house.
Well, a candy bar ain't gonna hurt you none.
What? No, but it's 10 or 11.
Who gave her some advice.
You need some hormones.
And told her a story that began long ago.
Does the name Idgie Threadgoode ring a bell?
No, ma'am. I don't think so.
You'd remember her. Idgie and her friend Ruth ran the Whistle Stop Café. Idgie was a character, all right.
If you ever touch her again, I'll kill you.
Well, she murdered that man is beyond me.
You ain't fooling me, girly girl. You're in a whole mess of trouble. You understand?
Did anybody really think she did it? Some said yes, some said no.
Academy Award winner Kathy Bates.
Well, I got mad, and it felt terrific. Tawanda.
And Academy Award winner Jessica Tandy.
How many of them hormones you taking, honey? You didn't kill Ed now, did you?
Not yet.
I feel better because all these people have lived as long as you remember. Friends, best friends.
Yes, ma'am. What are you doing? Face it, girls. I'm older and I have more insurance.
Hello, welcome back to the Lesbianism Podcast. We're discussing Fried Green Tomatoes, the film from 1991. And starting with you, David, what are your thoughts of the film Fried Green Tomatoes?
I grew up with this movie, to be honest. I watched it when I was younger with my mom. I think this is, again, the fifth or the sixth time that I watch it. Love it, love it. Unfortunately, as I said before, I kind of ruined the book because I watched the movie before reading the book. But the movie got to be another of those movies that you have to watch at least once in your life. Really love it. Interesting part of the movie, I had no idea that there were in the world people that would be charmers, which is something I discovered thanks to the movie, and it was a very interesting thing. I love also the parts when they tell about the certain stories and they go passed by from person to person, like obviously when Ninny tells the story to Evelyn, but also when there's a part of Idgie telling the story about the frozen lake to Smokey, taken away by the ducks, and that was told to her by the brother. There were so many things that I loved about this movie. Obviously, again, I love the Tawanda part of Evelyn becoming a very strong, powerful woman. And although normally some scenes like this in reality, I really, really hate them. But I love the part of the scenes when Evelyn was getting angry at the teenagers, girls abusing her.
Oh yeah, she started. How did you run into a car? I get it once,
six
times.
It was funny. It was funny. I mean, it's one of those things when in reality, obviously, this is something that you don't want to see, and it's horrible and it's ugly when things happen like this. In reality, you feel like, oh, these idiot people. But in the story and in the context, it kind of made sense. So it's kind of like out of reality, and I loved it. And on top of that, I love Katie Bates. I'm a mum, like watched so many movies of her. In fact, just last week I watched Titanic. I have my routine. I watch Titanic once a year. And Katie Bates is she's golden queen for me. And
she just
I don't know,
no matter what she's doing.
Whatever she does, she's incredible. You will never forget her. You never forget her. Incredible. Like even in a movie like Misery, even when she did American Horror Story, I just live for her. She's incredible.
Of course, American Horror Story too.
She did so many things. I love it.
I mean, she did. And the thing is, it took her a long time. I mean, she's in a lot of stuff before she became a star.
Right.
She's in Arthur 2 on the Rocks and so on and so forth.
Was she?
Yep, she's the social worker who's trying to give Liza Minnelli and Arthur a baby.
No way. I've got to have that. Boy, I have to go back
and she was on Broadway with Sandy Dennis, Karen Black, and Cher in Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, which was the Robert Altman play, which they made a movie of it, and she appears in that, and that was 82 sort of thing. So It took her a while but anything she is, I agree with you. I mean, she just shines. She's just one of these actors that shines no matter. You can give her Mother Goose nursery rhymes, and she's shined doing them. Sort of.
And she's very versatile. I don't know if you remember the movie Misery.
Yeah.
Oh, she was incredible in that one. I just loved it.
Yeah.
Nothing like a little kidnapping of your favorite author and breaking and hobbling his ankles so he can't escape. I mean, you know, that's real love for an author right there. Don't you think, Barbara?
With a friend of mine, she says, "I'm your biggest fan." I'm like, oh, no.
Can be quite scary. What are your thoughts, Barbara, of the film?
Oh, well, I'd watch anything with Kathy Bates, Jessica Tandy. I mean, you know, Mary Louise Parker. And the funniest thing is, you know, Mary Louise Parker, I keep seeing her, and in my mind, I'm also seeing her in Weeds, where she's like, you know, a drug dealer. But I'd watch any movie with them in it. But I also like the movie better than the book because, of course, Ninny's still alive at the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's more happy ending.
You know, and there's just, it's sort of like once you know, the book is richer for all those other characters, but it's also purer for getting rid of them in the movie. I mean, the movie, you get the story, you know, it's very solid and pure without a lot of extra people in it. But, you know, I really love the movie, and I think I've seen it a couple of times now, but, and like I said earlier, when you see things at different stages of your life, you get different things out of it, I think.
You're so 100% correct on that. Wait to just change, and then you see something, it's like, wow, why did that just didn't resonate when I was 20,
right?
So to speak.
The only thing I'm confused about in the film basically is Ninny Threadgoode. Is she supposed to be Idgie in the movie?
Yeah, she's Idgie, or they allude to it very strongly.
They say that in Wikipedia, but it's not true because she's sitting there saying, I owned this house for 40 years with Cleo. And then she talks about, you know, so there's no way.
It's hard because it kind of screws you up with the honey at the end by Ruth's grave. And, you know,
and Kathy Bates or Evelyn gives her this look, and she kind of like bobs her head up and down, like, you know, kind of things.
But they don't tell you exactly. Yeah, they leave it like finale kind of open, just so you.
And I was confused. Well, I was just confused because, you know, when it talks about Albert and Cleo, and she's talking about, you know, her son and things like that, and it's like, you know, and the thing
when
is,
does that happen? Yeah.
Well, I mean, because the I guess where the movie, because this is where the movie kind of goes. It doesn't go sideways or anything like that. It just goes in a different direction. Is that once Ruth dies, we're assuming that Idgie's bringing out Stump, but we don't get any more of what happens after Ruth dies. All we get basically, because when Idgie goes to court with George, Stump is no longer there, sort of thing. You know, you kind of get, you know, you get Cissy Tyson's character up in the thingy, and you got, you know, the townspeople, but Stump is not there, and so it's almost like his character's kind of a bit like Jesus in the Bible, just appears until he maybe comes back at the age of 32. But so you're never quite sure here. There's like, because, you know, did Idgie marry someone and then have another child? And then, so because of that, it kind of left things up in the air for me. So I was always confused by that ending in the movie, which you know,
I didn't know that Fannie Flagg was good friends with Mary Kay Ash, so that explains that in the story and in the movie. But you know, with the beekeeper part, where Mary Stuart Masterson is got to do where she sticks her hand in there to, you know, the stunt woman had decided to bail on the movie, and she either had to let the movie sink or do it herself. So she did it successfully, though. Although I would have been very nervous at having to do that particular stunt, sticking her arm in that tree with all the bees. I would have really had issues with that.
But how did they do this scene actually? Was she?
She did it. She actually did it. She stuck her hand in there.
I think it's not really complicated. I think you have to see where is the queen. If you don't touch the queen, the bees won't do anything. And because it's not a beehive like the normal, you know, with that house.
No, it's a colony basically.
Probably you will see the one that is full hanging. So you have to just break that, and the bees will be around you, but they won't. I don't think they will sting you.
We have hives around here, and I give them a huge berth. I just walk all the way around them.
Yeah, I would never take the risk, I'm afraid. I mean, it's I can imagine it's a beautiful experience because you feel connected to nature, but it's scary at the same time.
I've got a friend who keeps beehives. And
if you're smoking a cigarette and you blow the fumes of the cigarettes to the bees, that make them go to sleep. That's why when
It relaxes them somehow, whatever it is. I think it's frankincense they use sometimes, a very small bit.
Yeah.
But I'll have to ask my friend actually. I never really asked her what she blows all over them. I just know it's smoke.
Honey.
I mean, I know that Mary Stuart Masterson was trained with a beach charmer to do that scene, and they wanted to get a stunt person in to do that. Mary Stuart Masterson says that if I'm in a movie, I have to do my own stuff. That's how I stay in character. The interesting, I mean, I love Mary Stuart Masterson. We don't see too much of her these days, but I mean, if you look at her career, like Benny and June and Some Kind of Wonderful and Bed of Roses, she was the little girl in Stepford Wives because her father directed that movie. So she's been around since the age of 3 in films all the way through. So, and I had to say I do miss her. I would like to see more Mary Stuart Masterson. She should be doing more now. So, another interesting thing about Fried Green Tomatoes is that this was a very big year for women's movies at that time. Fried Green Tomatoes, the reason why it probably didn't get as more awards is that it was up against Thelma and Louise the same year.
Oh yeah, that one.
Which one?
Thelma and Louise.
Ah, yes.
So Leandro, what are your thoughts of the film?
Well, it's not quite exactly the same as you said at the beginning. Than the book, the end has been changed a little. There were moments that were like really moving, like for example, when Chris O'Donnell dies, and I think that was the first big hit that she had in her life, because it was someone that she was kind of in love or admire, and then she have to deal with that. And comparing with the other, how the family deal with that, she was needed to go away and kind of do the process by herself in her own way. And it happened the same when Ruth died, that she was needing that thing again, like kind of like disappear, like disconnect from the world and then come back. I really enjoyed, really moving movie. Katie Bates, I love her. I think she should be more awarded more. Just give her thing just in case.
They did say it's not reasonable interpretation. You guys were asking about Idgie and being one and the same as Ninny.
Yeah.
But it said that the novel makes it more clear that Ninny and Idgie are two different people, but there are scenes in which they both appear to interact with each other. But in the film, they are not reasonable interpretation. Ninny says that she married Idgie's brother Cleo, which is how she acquired the Threadgoode name. Ninny also states in the film that she had a crush on Buddy, which would be quite a strange thing to admit if Ninny was really Idgie, since Idgie and Buddy would soon be her own brother. So I don't know. That is kind of I was confused.
Yeah, I was confusing a bit too, and I thought, and then I got it. I understood who was who in the movie, but I don't know. I really enjoyed the movie, and while we were chatting, I remember that when David was telling something, and then I remember that. Well, this is really cool because my mom died when I was 2.5, so this story was being told by my dad and my stepmother, she wasn't there, but it's really cool, when the story passes. My mom and my dad went to visit my dad's auntie, and she was really fat, but fat like obese, right? They were eating, and my mom was really skinny person, but those type of people that can eat and never put weight.
Yes, I hate them.
I didn't inherit it. I didn't inherit that, but well, it was that. So this aunt, my dad auntie was criticizing her all the time about the amount of food she was eating, until one day she said, "Well, look, this is really interesting. I eat a lot and you put on weight." And since that day, the auntie never say anything again about food to her. And I love those situations, when you in a really clear and clever way you put someone in their place, and they can't do anything at all. So, and I love those things, because this is how as we said at the beginning, the story passes over. For example, there's a dish that my mom used to prepare, my stepmother used to prepare from time to time, and it's nice because it's like you eat it and then you feel like that maybe that person is for a moment is with you, like or could bring that maybe when you're eating that someone will tell you a story about the person, and that's really nice.
Well, you have nicer relatives than I did. I mean, I had this crabby old aunt, and we went to her house one day, and she was giving us dinner, and I said, "My mom peels the cucumbers," and she goes, "I'm not your mom."
How old were you?
I don't remember, but I still remember because I was really fussy. Like I wouldn't eat anything. So my mom would peel the cucumbers, and she, and my aunt was like, "Well, I'm not your mom, so eat it."
Your mom was good people.
So yeah, I really, really enjoy this movie. This is but I watched it interested. I watched this movie last year and I watched it again. And when you watch a movie and you don't mind, I would watch it again, I don't know, soon, because the story is really, really nice. And something that I really like at the end is that when Evelyn went to the graveyard and she saw a little letter that it was impossible that has been being written by what's her name? Sorry. I think that
Idgie, Ninny.
Idgie wrote a letter for Ruth, which had been impossible because by that time she was dead, but it was there. So for me, it was like, okay, she found a way of the story carry on going. That's how I understood it. I don't know. I don't know. What do you think about that? Maybe I'm wrong. So I really, really like that touch at the end of the movie. So
I thought I was kind of more interested in the trial and what went on and how the pastor brought in his was it encyclopedia or thesaurus or whatever, so he could swear on that Bible. So because he was going to lie to get them out of the trouble they got into. When the black gentleman was, obviously going to be lynched to just put it for real, because that's probably what would happen. They wanted blood, and they didn't want a girl's or a white woman's blood. It was his they wanted. But, and then they kept coming back and trying to investigate the story. And that's when, was it, they cooked the body, I guess. I'm trying to figure out who did they feed the barbecue? Was that just special barbecue?
So this is what happened.
Well, I know what happened, but I was trying to figure out. I know that they cut up the body and everything else. But I was trying to figure out, was that just special barbecue for the detectives? They did set that aside when normal.
No, this is what happened. They said that the secret was in the sauce.
Right.
And I tell you this because something like
they barbecued the body. That was barbecue.
No.
They ate the body, Leandro. That's how they hid him when they killed him.
Well,
he didn't make a barbecue sauce. He was the meat.
Coming together.
I don't think that thing happened like that. Look, I will tell you what happened. This is not. This is a real
sauce. Yeah, I know.
This is a real story that happened in Argentina, right? A lady killed someone that was annoying her. The man was abusing her, so she killed him. And do you know how they trap her? She was cutting. She used to work as a butcher, so she know how to cut meat. She used all the body of the man that she could do to make food, and people buy it and enjoy it. But they discovered because she couldn't get rid of the bones, right? So what I think that happened
wood chipper, always a wood chipper.
What I think that happened in this story is like they throw the body to the pigs, and the part that they couldn't.
Pigs will eat anything.
Yes, the part they couldn't use, let's say, to feed the pigs. With that, they made like a sauce or a base to cook, and that's what they feed the.
Well, if you notice when they flashed to the grill, that rack of ribs, that was not a pig. They were cooking him and feeding it too. They were saying the secret was in the sauce because he liked the barbecue so much. And in the book, it explained they fed that man to the detectives.
Right. Well, you remember Roald Dahl, Lamb to the Slaughter?
Yeah, the leg of lamb. I love that story.
That was not an original idea.
Yes.
I guess it happened. I wouldn't put it past anybody.
In Lamb to the Slaughter, she fed them the murder weapon, which was the lamb steak when it was frozen.
Yeah.
And so
that story is really cool.
What story is that?
It's called the leg of lamb.
Slaughter.
Yeah, there's a short story where a woman kills her husband with a frozen leg of lamb.
Leg of lamb.
Really, I haven't read that.
And she feeds it to the detectives, and so now the murder weapon is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Really, you
who
love
wrote
it.
that? Do you know who the author is?
Roald Dahl.
Roald Dahl.
Okay, I have not read that.
Giant Peach and all that material.
Yes, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. We should read one of those.
Yeah, I've read those, but I have not read that story.
Yeah, that was a good story.
Roald Dahl wrote a bunch of short stories, and basically they were all kind of filmed. I think I don't know if that one was filmed. They were filmed in Tales of the Unexpected.
Yes.
Right.
So if you watch that old show from the 70s, they took all those stories and filmed them. They were all based on his adult short stories, which are all a bit macabre.
Yeah, I think they were made by Spielberg or not.
No, they were made
Amazing
by
Stories, maybe.
There was it was an ITV series that aired here in the 70s because Roald Dahl was very English, so they were made for here.
And I have this
I'll
one.
have to look those stories up. I love short stories.
This is from Roald Dahl called The Tweets.
I love that.
Yeah, I have the museum.
But again,
what about yourself?
The friendship was definitely first and foremost. One of my favorite parts is when Idgie and Ruth are on the train throwing food to all those.
Yeah, that was really cool. And it's
from the book. That was different from the book. In the book, someone else threw the food from the train.
Well, I don't know, because in the books it tell you that they could never find the person. They were saying there was someone.
It was a bandit, I think.
But they could never find that person. Then in a moment I thought, well, what about this? You know, when you said, oh no, Peter has been doing these graffitis at night, but no one like Banksy, and no one knows Banksy in real life. So when I saw it in the movie, I thought, well, maybe it could be that she was doing it and then create like a name.
Right.
Well, in the book, there is a small segment where Buddy says that he walked into Idgie and Ruth, and their faces were covered in black.
Yeah.
So he didn't say that it was them, but it was kind of, it could have been them.
Yeah.
Because they didn't tell him that it was them. He's kind of like he's piecing pieces together, sort of thing. So, what about yourself, Craig? What are your thoughts of the film?
I love the scenes with the steam trains. To see how magnificent they are, and it was really sad that Idgie lost her brother Buddy, who was killed by the train. That was really sad. But I like how it intertwines into the whole location. I love the massive wide panning shots of the diner, and I like the confrontation scenes with the abusive husband.
Yeah,
it was really shocking when he kicked her down the stairs, knowing that she was pregnant as well.
He was such a nice guy, wasn't he?
I love it when she turned to him and Idgie said, "If you touch her again, I'll kill you." I thought, yeah, good. The court scenes were quite moving as well when they said that they loved each other. That was really touching. I thought quite emotional, and that's when I realized like what the film, the love aspect of the movie between the characters. And I really liked is it Big George? But I felt he was quite vulnerable because during that time
everybody loved Ruth in the movie.
Because I think Big George would be like the fall guy, because if anything went wrong in the town, they're just literally going to hang him just because he's black.
That's what they were planning to do.
Yeah,
they wanted to.
Scary.
Douchebags.
They had enough people dying and being more grievously wounded by those trains. You'd think they'd put up a safety gate at some point.
Something, anything.
Please don't put your feet in here.
Then again, we had a railway down by my house where I grew up. And that was an active, your sister, Keith, lives down by there. And that was an very active railway once upon a time. And We used to ride our bikes and see you could beat the train across to the other side. Kids are just stupid, okay? We would always put the quarters and the pennies on it so it'd smush them down and, But yeah, kids are stupid around trains. They really are. Speaking from experience.
Wow.
But but what I did like about Idgie though is when I cannot remember the sheriff. I think he liked her, but he was in the Klan, and she goes, "Boy, y'all need to change your shoes when you put those bed linens over your head, because we all know who you are just by your shoes, you dumbass."
I like the main sheriff, the big guy.
The big guy, yeah. What was
remember
his name?
One who had a crush.
Grady.
Yes, yes.
Loved Idgie.
And I didn't realize he was the sheriff until I actually saw the badge. And I thought, oh, I said to my mum, I said, oh no, he's the sheriff. He's actually one of the sheriffs in the town. And but yeah, it was really good. And even the music was nice. I liked the soundtrack.
Yeah. There was just something about the whole movie. It was just presented. There was tragedy and there was drama and there was sadness and there was happiness. But all the emotions how they put that movie together were very resonant with people. I think it was a feel-good movie, even though it was sad, because there's not one episodic thing that didn't happen in there that probably hasn't happened to any of us. There's loss, there's love, there's happiness, there's dissatisfaction. I mean, it just covered the gamut of emotion that life just throws at you. I mean, that's why I liked it so much anyway. And then the pure love of two women. I mean, that's really what it was. They loved each other, whether it was something physical or not. They just actually loved each other.
Well, and then Evelyn and Ninny's friendship. I mean, that was
that too. I mean, so much, about women, and people really don't get how women tick. They really don't. Whoever directed this movie really got that.
My dad worked in old people's homes when I was a kid, and my mum was a cleaner in one of them as well, which I later went on to work in dementia care. So it's like I was brought up around all different nursing homes and going into each room, and there was like a different life story to be told. And I was only like 5 years old, and I used to make friends with all the grandmas and granddads, and it was nice. It was really nice. You could write a book just going to an old people's home.
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. And they have stories to tell. And when you go into places like that, they so want to tell their stories. Yeah. That's all they want to do is talk about way back then.
And they have long-term memory, but they don't have memory from
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
For them, it's the long-term memory.
I really like at the end when Ruth was asking to tell the story about the ducks. Yeah. And then I love that because she said, can you tell me the story about the ducks? And she said, but you have heard this story several times. I said, well, please do it one more time. And then that was really sad because she was asking like a story like to try to like leave this planet, with something like really nice, and it was, for me, was really moving on. And she knew that while she was telling the story that the other one was leaving,
I thought it was a nice touch when Sipsy came in, or Cicely Tyson, and put the cover, was it the mirror, and then stop the clock from. They don't do that anymore. I've only seen that once. That kind of just gave me the chills thinking about my auntie doing that like 40 years ago when somebody died 50 years ago.
Do you know why they cover the pictures?
Cover the pictures, the mirror.
Cover the pictures in the mirror because you need to be thinking about the dead or the departed. And if you have a mirror there, that means you're looking at yourself.
Well, also, if you're even more superstitious, you don't want the spirit plane to be, you don't want to pay attention to that, so to speak. So you want that person to move on. Spirits have been known to entrap beings and souls and whatnot.
Don't say
Jewish people cover the mirrors when someone dies. I mean, still.
I haven't seen that in eons.
Well, the Jewish faith, they still do that, and you're not allowed to sit. You're supposed to be sitting on wooden chairs and stuff because it's not about you. It's about remembering.
Yeah.
And mirrors are put on the face of the earth because they're about your vanity. So that's the reason behind it all. So I mean, I like the movie a lot, but to play a little bit of devil's advocate, I do think that I think the lesbianism is very, very shoved to the back here with the movie.
They did that on purpose. They did that on purpose.
Well, they did it on purpose because at that time, gay rights was forbidden to be shown and stuff like this on television because of the AIDS crisis and stuff like this. And of course, they wanted to make their money back, and they didn't want to be known as a lesbian film, and no one would go to it at that time. Of course, I think if it was made today, they probably could probably a little bit more in that. So I mean, even like I know I kind of watched this closely because I was always a fan of the book anyway, and I'm a fan of the movie. But I did watch to see if there's like any stolen glances with each other or anything like that. But I think we can say in the movie that they're not lesbians; they're just friends.
Well, they said
because
I read in Wikipedia that the food fight is supposed to be symbolic of their real relationship.
Yeah.
But I mean, as I saw, but if you look at when Ruth dies, there's no pictures of Idgie anywhere in her room when she dies. They
had one picture together. I know they did have one picture together. They had their arms.
Yeah, but what I'm saying though, when you finally do get insight into the home of Idgie and Ruth as Ruth is passing, there is nothing to sit there and say that Idgie and Ruth occupy the same room.
No, exactly, no.
Well, it's like the Mary Tyler Moore show, and she and Dick Van Dyke had separate beds.
Yeah.
It's all the time you're in, right?
Yeah. So I mean, you could feed into it, but I was actually kind of looking for that just because it's like
I thought that odd because there were gay movies coming out in the 80s. There was all kinds of gay movies coming out. That's why let's put this in perspective. And between 1986 to 1995, if you did a gay movie, they always died of AIDS by the end of the movie. That's a different thing.
Lesbians always die. In a lesbian relationship, someone always dies. Did you notice that?
I have noticed that.
So
I got nothing.
Even when you talk about personal best with Mariel Hemingway and Rachel Ward or whatever. So, but so I was kind of like, so I was actually looking at it because I know everyone's going, okay. And the thing is, I never actually picked up on the lesbianism in the movie at all. I picked it up in the book a lot.
It's subliminal. It's there, but I don't, it's not overtly in your face or anything else. You got to kind of figure out what these two women love each other and just make your own mind up about it. I figured,
Well, the thing is I mean, to show Idgie's love for Ruth, you can't, because she's a tomboy and all the other stuff that goes on with it. You can understand the Idgie, but you're never quite sure if Ruth is reciprocating any of this emotion back at her. That maybe they're just friends, even though that one might be in love with the other.
Yeah, I think it's clearer in the book than the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean, they did say she fell in love with her. I mean, they say that, both sides in the book, but not in the movie.
Yeah. And in the movie, you can see where they do show that Idgie's in love with Ruth, but they don't really show Ruth reciprocating that love at any point.
But they're not reciprocating the love in that capacity. They're just very strong for each other. They're there for each other.
Well,
but you can get that with friends,
right?
Just because two women are supporting each other and they can have a strong friendship connection.
Well, also I think in the time when they have the birthday party, when Idgie has that birthday for her, and then they end up swimming in the lake, and you can tell they really love each other. And then she says, "I'm going to go back and marry this guy because that's what I'm supposed to do."
Yeah.
She's like, she doesn't want to. I mean,
who picked that douchebag for a husband is what I want to know. What were they thinking?
Yeah, but I think this is where the book makes it a bit more clear. This is because, to be honest, what happened was her father died. She took care of her father. There's no one to take care of her mother.
Right.
Frank Bennett, on the outside, was a very respectable person in his community. As we know, with most people anyway, you can, whether it's Michael Jackson, Bill Cosby, or anyone else, they can be very respectable on the outside, but once you get behind closed doors, you can turn into whoever you want to.
Oh, no kidding.
I think, and I kind of wish this scene was in the film that wasn't in the book, where Frank Bennett had a glass eye. And he doesn't have a glass eye in the film. But what was very interesting is when this drunk hobo goes into the bar, and and Frank goes up to him and goes, "Can you tell which one's the glass eye?" And he points it out. Right. And Frank's kind of taken back, and then Frank Bennett leaves the bar, and the bartender asks, "How do you know?" He goes, "It's the one that had the most life in it." That's how he could tell, because his real eye is basically dead. His eye basically is just a horrible person. And I thought that was quite an interesting thing that you got in the book. And it was quite nice if they had that in the movie a little bit, or a little bit more about Frank Bennett's character, because Frank Bennett is very a 2D character in this book. Because then in the movies around about, it starts off about the murder, and it's like it goes to the murder, and it kind of ends with the murder and the trial. But Frank Bennett's very, very, you don't know a lot, and they do hint around. It would have been nicer to fill his character out a little bit more.
He's a cartoon villain.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So, and then when you find out the reason why the Frank Bennett became the way he does, doesn't explain, doesn't excuse his behavior, but it makes sense of his behavior. Like, in love with his mother, and he finds his mother having an affair on his father, and that kind of ruins his whole thing about women and all the other stuff that goes with it, which kind of flushes his character out a little bit more but the movie, he's very 2D sort of thing. And you don't get a big feeling about Troutville, the black community at all. You kind of get it through his Idgie, everything takes place through the Fried Green Tomatoes Café. So if it doesn't happen there, it's not happening anywhere. So I thought that was quite interesting how they were able to do that with the movie. And of course, I mean, the movie is, I think, just reaching 2 hours. So if they did put all this stuff in, we're probably looking at a mini series anyway. So you can't do that.
You got to say, you can't say that the Atlanta chapter of the National Railway Historical Society didn't put up a lot of information for this, but it had a lot to do with this movie being filmed.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
Interesting.
What I really
and I kind of would. What,
Excuse
Leandro?
me?
What I really liked was like, well, we all know that there was a relationship between Ruth and Idgie, but I like the way in the movie is shown. It's like it's like there's not even kiss each other, but there's something going on, and I like the way like they give you like kind of hints. For example, there was one moment that Idgie is dressed as a man and Ruth is dressing as a girl, and then when they're in the kitchen and then they're playing with food, or when they go and have the picnic, and that something's going on, and they know that they love each other, but it's not that there's no need to show you, kissing or having a sexual scene to.
You don't have to show that to show two people love each other. And that's why I thought it was beautifully done in this movie. That's why I enjoyed it so much. They loved each other, but they didn't have to, they kept it the way they kept it.
I'm not sitting there saying that they needed a sex scene or a kiss scene.
No, the food scene was supposed to represent that.
But I do think that they kind of made it so it was safe for Middle America.
Right. Yes, that's what I'm saying. I could not fish for the word. You're right. It was a safe way to present this film. But then, but you know how we always talk about this, like the color purple of things like that. There's a whole lot of stuff that needs to be addressed in these films, and people find a good way to bring it across so that people in Middle America say, "Wow, that's some bullshit," or "Wow, that was terrible," or maybe it just reaches that additional audience. And and just wow, I didn't know that. That was horrible that happened.
Living in Florida, where books are being banned by the hour, any book that deals with racism and lesbianism, so out of here. I mean, if this book came out right now, it would be banned.
Oh, they wouldn't ban. They're just trying to get rid of that CRT stuff, I think. But I mean, I don't think you should ban any books. But I'm really cautious about what a 10-year-old reads.
I don't agree. Because you haven't seen the book, the list of banned books. Anything that has a gay character or talks about slavery or anything that's historical, out. And it's really frightening, actually. And any crazy parent can just say, I don't want that book. And it's, it's not literally banned, but it's taken off the shelf, and it takes so long to even look for anyone to look at it that it's banned. And and there's people storming the school boards that don't even have kids, and they're demanding books be banned. And it's a very scary time right now. And if this book came out right now, where people were reading it, the way it describes the lynching and the black people.
I guess on that note, I guess we should rate the film. So, starting with you, David. What's your how many stars do you give this?
Definitely a 5 stars out of 5.
I'm so glad you didn't give it a 0.
Oh no, absolutely loved it. Like every movie and book comparison we've done, I think so far, I've loved every movie, and I actually watched them already in the past.
It is a feel-good movie. It's a great.
It's an incredible story. The main 2 themes that actually got into my heart is basically the theme of community, which I think it was most the central part, which is why I think they didn't focus on the romantic love, whatever, etc., which is not the main focus of the story. It's more about the fact that of the community, the kind of like the empowerment of Evelyn, because she kind of got part of the sort of community thing thanks to Ninny, or for example, Ruth becoming more like free from the abusive husband because of Idgie, but also the community and the fact that they were helping in the cafe, every person that was feeding them, everyone for free. Well, not everyone, but like a lot of people for free. So it's definitely like the theme of community, and also the wisdom and the knowledge passed from generation to generation. I think these 2 topics are just beautiful, and the fact that these days we kind of like, at least that's my view on this. It's kind of, we live in a world where it's so individualistic, which is from a little bit okay, because we are individual, but at the same time we lost the idea of what the importance of community. And then even our elders, who are basically, in the past we used to consider the old people being people keeping all the knowledge and the wisdom of the past, etc., and now they kind of like thrown away, and then they kind of like useless, and nobody cares about the elders, so it makes you think. Those are 2 incredible topics and themes to talk about. So definitely love the challenge thinking of the book. Definitely loved it.
What about yourself, Craig? How many stars do you give Fried Green Tomatoes, the film?
I would give it a 5. And when me and my mum were watching this movie, we thought, oh, this is a really nice movie. And we were like, why did Keith choose this movie? And we were like, it's not really something Keith would have chosen. And then suddenly there was a cannibalistic barbecue scene. And then we were like,
that was the best part. I don't know why nobody likes the cannibal part except me.
And true to the nature, it was excellent. And it was really good.
And what about yourself, Leandro?
I'm debating between the 4 and the 5, but I will give it a 5, even though they changed a bit the end, because it's not the same in the book. But I like it, and I don't know if you know this, but we have a phrase in Argentina saying that the kitchen in the house is like the heart of the house, because it's where everything happens. And I like it because when they opened this bar, for a moment, it's like that was like wherever it was happening, everyone was passing there, and it was like a kind of like, it was a hard open for everyone, because even though the black people were not allowed, blah blah blah, she was saying no, they're allowed, they can sit on the back of the building, no one could bother them, and then everyone is welcome. So I really like the story, and the message and everything. So with a 5.
What about yourself, Vix? How many stars do you give this?
Oh, I gotta give that a 5. It's just like one of the, every time it's on, I'll watch it. Not on streaming, but if I see it, and it's on cable, I'll keep it on, just because I just like the I just like how the friendships evolve. It's just it's a beautiful movie. It might be a chick flick, I don't know, but y'all seem to like it, and you're dudes, so. But I mean, it's a feel-good movie. What'd you say?
We're all gay as well. So I said we're all gay. So
why has that got to do with anything?
And what about yourself, Barbara? How many stars do you give it?
Oh, definitely a 5. And the one thing I wanted to say too is about it's also about taking care of each other, but also human kindness. I mean, it was during the Depression, right?
Yeah.
And so they were feeding the people that, they had a big homeless population, of course, echoes what we have now. And, but they had no qualms about, feeding them, no matter who came around, they fed them. And then the whole throwing the food off the trains, they were going to feed people. And that was to them an expression of love. And that's a theme that goes from the beginning all the way to the end with the appendix and the recipes. and the fact that the fried green tomatoes was her birthday present. So food is love. And
I'm gonna have to. I just didn't have. They didn't have the recipes in my Kindle version.
I know they don't have.
I feel kind of ripped off right now.
That's what happens when you don't read a real book.
I've got
my
real
Kindle
books. I
version.
got a little house though. I've got a whole wall of books in one little room.
Come on, imagine that you have a library where you live, right where you can get it.
The recipes are in my Kindle version.
Not mine.
I don't know. I have it in here.
Yeah, they're in my Kindle version. I'm gonna give this a solid 5. I think it's a really, really good movie. I do prefer the book a little bit more, only because I love more of the characters and a lot of. Well, I also like the backgrounds, and I like knowing more about Frank Bennett, and I like knowing about all the subsidiary characters, and I love knowing about the community. The film's more about the 4 women, where the book is more about the community and everything going on in the community. So I guess, and I quite like the community behind them as well, sort of thing, which I do understand. You can't really put all that in a
I wish
movie
they would have put it
otherwise.
together a little more though in the film. That's my only gripe, because the book, they left me thinking that Idgie and Ninny were the same person, but they weren't, because the history doesn't add up even in the movie. But they don't clarify any of that. So I guess you're supposed to walk away thinking possibly, I don't know.
Yeah. I would have liked Ninny Threadgoode to have died, and then she gets the trinkets, and how that would have spread. For me, that would have been a more poetic. This kind of feels like a tacked on happy ending for me.
Like where she brings her
Disney.
Like she moves her in the house and all that other stuff. That's just, I think I liked it. I don't know.
I mean, it's okay, but it does have this tacked on happy ending situation towards it, sort of thing, where the book is a bit more. The book to me was a bit more realistic, because what you got with Ninny is like when Evelyn would show up, Ninny's dress would be inside out, and the thing is that she's getting older, and then she's waiting for her time to go, and then when she dies very peacefully, and all the other stuff, and I quite liked all that in the book.
They never did say what kind of cancer she had, though. Did they?
It doesn't matter. I think when you're 90 years old, I don't think it matters what kind of cancer you have.
No, I was talking about Ruth. What kind of cancer she had, dummy?
She had ovarian cancer.
Was it ovarian?
And then went to the pancreas as well, if I remember well.
Okay, because I didn't see that. I was trying to figure out what she had.
Oh no, I mean in the book, I don't remember it in the movie.
In the movie, she kind of just had, that she
They didn't
also said, I
specify in the
remember
movie.
when Ruth died, and it's kind of just went into that. They didn't really go into a lot of detail. And I think but saying that, I do love the film a lot, so I'm going to give it a solid 5. So, and I'm sure if I had never read the book, I probably would still hold this as a pinnacle movie, a film about females empowerment and basically, and I love things that kind of reflects, but it does kind of give it does have a glossy version of the 20s and 30s and 40s as well. So it's kind of like this glossy version of all that, which
The book starts out in the 20s and 30s, and the movie kind of starts out in the early 1900s. So it's kind of
yeah. But if you notice the way that the movie is filmed, when they flash back, there is a gloss over the film. There's a like a very glossy, because you're remembering, and we kind of remember the past as something that maybe a bit more glorious than what the reality is. And the book is a bit more. Yeah. The book is a bit more realistic, because you do get the racist thing in there. You do kind of get and just a lot of little details are going on, sort of thing. So it's not being painted. Where here, it's kind of be painted like Little House on the Prairie, like Little House on the Prairie is like this glossy version of life in the Midwest. But let's face it, these people had no bathroom. They're going to an outhouse, and basically they could die from a common cold at any moment, though they don't, but they don't in this world, sort of thing. So, but saying that, but I do like that. That's what I quite like about the movie. That does have this, I don't want a gut wrenching, people dying of chloria and all the other stuff that's going on at the time, you know what I mean? And like long, Ruth's long illness and what that really would have meant, with her dying of cancer, it wouldn't have been as picturesque as you've seen. It would have been like the light, the light flowing through the window and all the other stuff, sort of thing. Well, I guess that brings us to the end of the Literary License Podcast. Next week's, we will be doing Batman, the animated series. And of course, our remake will be Salem's Lot, the two miniseries from 1977 and 2004. And of course, our M&M, Monsters and Madmen, will be covering Deliverance from 1976. And we'll also be calling Race with the Devil from 1973. Our next America Goes Dark book will be Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold, about a girl who gets murdered by a serial killer and a pedophile, and how her ghost has to sit there and make sense of this.
Never read that book.
So it's good night for myself. Good night, Barbara.
Night. Thank you for another rousing.
We always like it when you're here.
So it's nice to meet everybody too.
Good night, Leandro.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Craig.
Good night, and don't forget, I'm doing the Doctor Who the censor rights night. Well, that'll be next week, next Tuesday.
You doing Doctor Who what, hon?
It's the censor rights from 1964 we're reviewing from season 1.
Oh yeah, Doctor Who. I forgot Doctor Who. Yeah, Doctor Who's the censor rights this month. Sorry, which aired in 1964. So.
God, that thing's.
And good night to you, David.
Hi, everyone. Good night.
Good night, Vix.
Happy Easter, everybody.
Happy Easter.
And it's good night. It's good night for myself.
If you ever find yourself stuck in the middle of the sea, I'll sail the world to find you. If you ever find yourself lost in the dark and you can't see, I'll be the light to guide you. Find out what we're made of when we are called to help our friends in need. You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. And I know when I need it, I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, and you'll be there. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah. Ooh, yeah, yeah. If you're tossing and you're turning and you just can't fall asleep, I'll sing a song beside you. And if you ever forget how much you really mean to me, every day I will remind you. Oh, find out what we're made of when we are called to help our friends in need. You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. And I know when I need it, I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, and you'll be there. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah. Ooh, yeah, yeah. You'll always have my shoulder when you cry. That's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah. Ooh.